You know, we all know, or at least we all should know, that gold is brought to the surface by volcanic activity and that earthquakes are most often associated with volcanic activity. But I ran across something by a couple of Australian geologists that's a little unusual about the production of gold and earthquakes. And it don't just apply to Australia, it applies to worldwide, and it certainly applies to the Superstition Mountains. But first I'd like to talk a little bit about the similarities between oil well drilling and gold mining. Now, I'm not talking about the average Joe going out there with a burro and a pick and shovel digging a hole in the wall. We're talking about major oil drilling and major mining. I know a little something about oil drilling because my brother was a mud logger. He owned a mud logging business. He had trailers that had all kinds of equipment in it, sleeping quarters, and these trailers would be set up at oil wells, and the driller would collect bags of material every day, and then the mud logger would come out and he would analyze what was in the bags. Now, mud is a substance that they add to oil wells to bring what's being drilled to the surface. And that's what the driller would collect, and the mud logger would analyze it. The closer they got to their target, the mud logger would come out, and if necessary, he would live in the trailer for several days as they got closer to their target area, which they call basins. In Oklahoma, where we were, it was called the Anadarko Basin. Now, I don't want to get political about this, but we've been lied to for years about oil. There's never been a fossil within 20,000 feet of where oil is found. And hundreds of tests, thousands of tests have been done on oil. Oil is not a fossil fuel. As we'll see in this picture, the continental plates are coming together and crashing, and one of them will be going lower than the other, subduction, and that will finally reach the melting point. And the porous rocks, such as limestone and sandstone, all have oil in them. And when they melt, that releases the oil, and this tremendous pressure that's down under the earth forces the oil upwards through the natural cracks and faults that are in the earth, and they never go down, they're always pushed up. And that's where our oil comes from, and it's being reproduced constantly. And they say that oil is not renewable, but it's being renewed all the time. Now, the mud logger, you know, in logging a well, it's very much like an assay in a gold mine, only much more detailed. On this page, which we'll show you in the picture here, you can see all kinds of information on this page. And this is just 11 feet of logging. Just a couple of days worth of logging. And they're going down between 28 and 30,000 feet, and this is just 11 feet. They used to do this by hand. I've seen my brother do all this sort of stuff by hand, but now the machinery analyzes and prints it out. Now, the similarity between oil well drilling and gold mining is that everybody has to have good information. If you're off just a little bit, you're not making money. For example, in an oil well, if they don't strike gas or oil or both at the level that they've predetermined they should, they're going to stop drilling, because drilling an oil well costs between $200,000 and $300,000 a day, and most of that money is put up by investors like you and I. And to go a couple of days beyond their target area and hit a dry hole is a lot of money. Likewise, in gold mining, if you're a little bit off in your assays and you're not following that vein, so to speak, it's costing a lot of money. So you see, I've said many times in our stories that a good assayer in a gold mine not only knows what mine that sample came out of, he knows at what depth the mine comes out of. In oil well drilling, these loggers write down even the colors of the samples that are coming up out of the earth. A gold assayer might not go that far, but he knows his business. He knows the names of all the materials that he's working with. And if requested, he can supply all that. So a good assayer like Joe Porterie knows the difference between various mines, and he would know the difference of the Lost Dutchman's gold compared to any mine that's ever been assayed by him. Now, what does all this information that these Australian geologists did on earthquakes have to do with the Superstition Mountains? A lot. People don't know it, but we have hundreds of tremors every day in the Superstition Mountains and in the Valley of the Sun. Hundreds of them. Most of them never make it past magnitude 2. Usually a magnitude 2 is not something that you can feel, but it has everything to do with the production of gold. Because what these Australian geologists discovered after many years of research was that, you know, gold down deep in the earth is all molten. It's melted, and so is the silver and the quartz and all the other minerals that's associated with it. And when they're in liquid like water, they're in solution. They're very minute. But they found that even the slippage in an earthquake as small as 5 thousandths of an inch causes a severe pressure drop. And the liquid is vaporized immediately, and the gold and silver comes out of solution and is crystallized immediately and is forced into the various cracks that exist in the earth and the faults. So in this photo that we're going to show you, which the Superstition Wilderness is circled, you see all the tremors that have been taking place in the Superstition Mountains. And gold, just like oil, is being reproduced all the time. Now, the bigger the earthquake, the more likely that something's going to reach the surface. But there's been some awful big earthquakes in the Superstition. In 1887, there was a large earthquake of 7.2. There were smaller earthquakes in 1910, 1935, and in 1961. Now, I don't necessarily believe this, but the Dr. Thorne search for the Dr. Thorne mine in 1869 with 267 people that we've already talked about in a story. We have evidence that Jacob Waltz was part of that search, and after they all left and went back to their home base, Jacob Waltz continued searching. Then we have the 1887 earthquake. Did that produce something that Jacob Waltz found that everybody else overlooked? I don't know. I don't necessarily believe so. So gold is being reproduced at all times through these minor little earthquakes. New information, new mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Superstition Mountains.